Dr. Alan Reyes sat alone in the quiet lab, surrounded by blinking machines and old satellites. It was late past midnight. Outside, the sky over New Mexico was dark and full of stars. He sipped cold coffee and stared at the monitor. Nothing unusual. Just static, silence, and numbers. Then it came. A sudden burst of sound broke the silence. Soft, strange, almost like a whisper. The audio file blinked on his screen. Signal number 77B. He leaned closer. The sound repeated. Not alien. Not a code. It was something older. Alan's hand shook as he played the sound again. Zareth, Duma Kor, Shalinor. The voice was deep and slow, like it came from something ancient and tired. Each word hit his ears like a drum beat in his skull. The room felt colder. Alan's heart pounded. He recognized the pattern. No, this can't be, he whispered. He opened a dusty file from his archives. Notes from an old research project on extinct human languages. One file was marked Proto-Human Echoes Do Not Use. He compared the sound. It matched. The language was human, lost for thousands of years. But now, one was speaking it. The next morning, Alan contacted the Global Signal Registry. A woman, with a firm voice, answered, "You're not authorized to investigate 77B, she said. "Delete your copy and stop all work." But this is a breakthrough, Alan started. This language was marked forbidden by the United Nations Council in 2098. You were ordered to stop immediately. The call ended. Alan sat back in shock. He had heard of language bans before, for safety reasons. Some ancient words were believed to affect the human brain in strange ways, but that was all theory, or so he thought. Why would they ban a forgotten language? Alan couldn't sleep that night. He listened to the recording again. He played it slow, then reversed it. Strange images flashed in his mind. Stone doors, red skies, tall beings made of ash and bone. His head hurt. I need to understand. This, he told himself. He turned on the mic and said the first word softly. Zareth. The lights in his lab flickered. He said another word. Duma. The floor vibrated under his chair. His glass of water began to ripple. Something was happening. Alan hit the stop button and backed away. Far above Earth, in the cold darkness of space, something began to shift. On a dead asteroid orbiting Saturn, a crack appeared in a smooth black surface, as if something inside was waking up. Alan told no one. He drove to an old friend, Dr. Lena Chow, a linguist who once worked for the N. She opened the door. With tired eyes, Alan, it's been years. I need your help. It's about a language. One they told us was dead. Lena frowned. I didn't find it, Alan said. It found me. He played the recording. Her face went pale. She stepped back, shaking her head. No, Alan. This language is dangerous. It was buried for a reason. You studied it. Why is it so dangerous? Lena spoke slowly. Because it doesn't just speak to you. It speaks through you. It changes you. It unlocks things. Old things. Things that should sleep forever. That night, Alan returned home and sat in silence. The signal kept playing in his mind like a song stuck. On repeat, he began to speak the words again, not even knowing why. Zareth. Duma. Shalinar. The lights flickered again. In his backyard, the earth cracked open slightly, just a hairline fracture. A soft hum rose from the ground. Alan didn't see it, but something inside the earth had started listening. In the cold of space, far from human eyes, an ancient machine opened for the first time in 10,000 years. Inside, long-dead wires pulsed with new energy. Symbols glowed red. A deep voice echoed inside the chamber. The same voice Alan had spoken. The voice returns. The seal weakens. The next morning, Alan woke up to find something strange carved. Into his kitchen wall, it was not written in chalk or marker. It was burned into the paint. 3 words in the ancient language Alan translated slowly. Do not speak. He stared at the wall, his heart racing. He picked up his recorder. He whispered, but what if I already did? Dr. Alan Reyes couldn't stop thinking about the words burned into his wall. Do not speak. But he had already spoken. An ancient voice was now inside him, whispering in dreams, humming under his skin. He tried to ignore it, but every day the world felt stranger. Birds flew in strange patterns. Shadows moved differently. Machines glitched for no reason. People around him complained of headaches and vivid nightmares. Something was changing, and it had started with his voice. Alan drove into the desert with his laptop and audio gear. He needed to be far from people, away from cities, towers, and satellites, at a remote spot. He set up a recording booth in his van and began to speak the strange language again. Carefully, slowly. Zareth Duma, Shalinor, Korak. Suddenly, his laptop crashed. The screen turned black. Then a new file appeared by itself. Echo.wav. He didn't create it. He played the file. It was his voice. But also not. The words were deeper, stretched, like something else was speaking through him. Then came a final word he had never said before. Cotter. Alan's chest tightened. The wind stopped blowing. For a moment, the world felt frozen. Then he heard a sound, a long, deep vibration from underground. The sand beneath his feet trembled. At that same moment, far across the solar system, something opened, on a lifeless moon near Saturn. A massive stone vault split down the middle. Dust rose. Inside, red eyes flickered open for the first time in 10,000 years. The sleeper had heard the voice. Back on Earth, the UN launched a silent investigation. A Black Ops agency called Project Quiet Voice intercepted Alan's files. Inside a secret base, the general listened to the echo.wav file. He turned to his team. Shut it down. He's repeating the trigger. But sir, an officer said, we buried this language for a reason. If it's speaking back, then we're already too late. Alan returned to his house, but he didn't feel alone. He felt watched. Not by cameras, not by people, but by something old, something deep. That night, he dreamed again, but this time it wasn't just a dream. He saw stone temples covered in strange writing. Oceans turned red. The sky opened, and a massive creature, made of ash and bone, walked between mountains. Its name echoed in his mind, Qatar. When he woke up, his nose was bleeding. The next day, Alan met Lena again. She looked pale, terrified. I found something, she said, handing him a photo. This was taken 50 years ago by a deep-sea drone near Antarctica. Alan stared at the image. It showed a massive stone slab with carvings. In the same language, but there was something else. He leaned closer. One carving showed a man, a human, speaking to a tall creature. Under the man's face, 3 symbols were carved. Alan felt dizzy. He recognized them. They matched the shape of my voice, he said softly. Lena nodded. Alan, that's you? Confused and shaken? Alan traveled to Antarctica. He bribed a pilot to fly him over the old drone coordinates. From the air, nothing looked strange. But when they flew lower, he saw it, a pattern in the ice. It was a circle. Perfect. Massive. Carved into the frozen land. At the center was a black stone. Half buried in snow, Alan landed, walked to the stone and touched it. Suddenly, images flooded his mind, not memories, but warnings. He saw the past. Ancient humans using the voice to trap Cotter. They didn't destroy it. They couldn't. They only put it to sleep, sealed behind words, locked by language. But now that language had been spoken again, and the seal was breaking, far beneath the Antarctic ice. Deep under the stone Alan touched, something moved. A giant hand made of bone and black crystal shifted in the dark. It was waking. Back at his hotel, Alan turned on his recorder. He looked into the lens, his voice shaking. If anyone finds this message, know that the language was not just communication, was a prison. And I may have just opened the door. Suddenly the power went out. His room went dark. The laptop glowed for a second. Then a voice played, slow and low. He speaks. Again, The sleeper hears. Let the world remember its doom. Alan whispered, What have I done? Alan didn't remember falling asleep, but when he opened his eyes, he was no longer in his hotel room. He stood in the middle of a ruined city. The sky above was dark red. The buildings were ancient, made of black stone and twisted metal. Fires burned in the distance and everywhere. Silence. He looked down at his hands. They were not his. These hands were older, scarred, covered in dust and symbols he didn't understand. But somehow, he did understand them. He knew what they meant. He began to walk, hearing whispers around him, the voice inside him, the old. Language was stronger here. It was guiding him. He turned a corner and saw a giant stone gate, half broken. On it was a carving of a human figure speaking to a towering shadow. The words below read, One voice broke the sky. One voice must. Seal it again? Alan woke up gasping. He was back in the hotel, but something was wrong. There was a deep pain in his chest. He ran to the mirror. There, carved across his chest, not cut, branded into his skin, were the same symbols from the dream. He whispered, Why do I know this place? Why do I understand words I never learned? Then a thought struck him. What if these weren't dreams? What if these were memories, but not his own? Later that day, Alan called Lena. She answered on the first ring. Lena, he said, What if the language carries memory? What if it's alive? Lena was quiet. Then she said, Alan, I've been doing some digging. I think the voice isn't just language. It's a recording device for time itself. Alan frowned. Do you mean when you speak it, you're not just repeating sound? You're unlocking history stored in the sound itself? You're remembering things that happened long ago, but not to you, to someone else. Someone who spoke the language before, Alan said slowly. Yes, Lena whispered. And maybe someone who tried to fight Cotter that night. Alan recorded himself while sleeping. He set up 3 cameras and placed a voice recorder on his chest. When he awoke the next morning, all the cameras were fried, black screens, data erased, but the voice recorder had one file saved. 3:13 a.m. Whispering, he pressed play. It was his voice, but deeper, rougher, as if spoken by something else using his mouth. Do not follow the gate of blood. Do not let him speak the final phrase. If the sentence completes, the sleeper will walk. Then silence, then one final line. Do not let me finish the sentence. Alan stared at the recorder, heart pounding. Me, he whispered. Am I the one who wakes it? Meanwhile, around the world, strange things were happening. In Siberia, birds flew in perfect spiral shapes, thousands at a time. In Africa, stone. Statues in a forgotten desert ruin began to hum. In Japan, a mountain cracked open, and a giant eye carved in stone was found beneath. The whole earth was responding. The language had been spoken. The sentence was beginning. Alan took a flight to Iceland, where Lena had traced an ancient underground site. Old human tribes had carved warnings into cave walls. Lena believed this was a memory gate, a place where the ancient voice could be fully heard. Inside the cave, Alan felt heavy. The deeper he walked, the louder the whispering became. But no one was speaking. The whispers were inside the stone. Suddenly, a wall lit up. Words appeared in glowing symbols, the same language again. Lena touched the wall and said, Alan, this is a map. Map of the voice. Alan looked closer. It was a sentence, broken into 8 parts. Each part had a location. And a name. One of the names was his. Another name was completely blacked out. Lena whispered, that part of the sentence is still hidden. Alan stared at the final symbol. It flickered, like it was still waiting to be spoken. That night, Alan had one last dream. He stood in a black desert under a dead sun. Across from him stood a giant being made of ash and bone, no face, just a hole where a mouth should be. The creature raised one long arm and pointed at him. Then it spoke in a voice that shattered the ground. You carry a memory that was never yours, but soon it will be. Alan fell to his knees. The sky cracked. He woke up screaming. Far in space, the sleeper stirred again. Inside the ancient vault, cracks formed across the final seal. Red light leaked through. The sentence was more than half-spoken. One human voice was unlocking the end of time. The world was no longer normal. After Alan Reyes spoke the ancient language, strange things began to appear. It started quietly. In the forests of Canada, hikers found smooth stones standing upright and perfect. Circles where none had been before. In Brazil, people reported stone men walking at night, silent and still, like statues that moved when no one watched. No one believed them. Until the videos came, the figures were tall, thin, and made of stone and black crystal. Their faces were blank. No eyes, no mouths. They didn't run. They didn't speak. Just listened. Alan saw the footage. His blood turned cold. "They've heard the voice," he whispered, "and they're coming." Back in Iceland, the memory cave grew unstable. The walls began to hum with low vibrations. Lena placed a hand on the stone. "They're not just statues," she said. "They're echo sentinels, living pieces of memory. They wake when the ancient sentence is spoken." Alan stepped back. "So every word I speak makes more of them?" Lena nodded. "Yes, and worse. They're learning." In the United States, military teams tried to destroy a sentinel found near an old radio tower. They used bullets, fire, and explosives. Nothing worked. Then the sentinel copied the sound of their voices and spoke the soldiers' names. Within minutes, the entire squad was dead. No wounds, no blood. Just silence. They died standing up, with eyes wide open, as if something reached into their minds and erased them. Alan felt the pressure building. The sentence, the old language, was trying to complete itself. Each night he dreamed of more symbols, more words. He didn't want to say them, but he couldn't stop. It was like the voice needed him to finish. He began writing down the words from his dreams. One night, Lena caught him whispering in his sleep. She shook him. "Awake." "You were saying the next line," she said. "Don't you see? The sentence is using you." Alan backed away from his notes. "Then we have to stop it." Lena pointed to the last page. "Too late. You already wrote the next part." Suddenly the cave shook. A deep, hollow roar echoed. Through the tunnel, then came a sound. Not like an animal or machine, but like stone grinding against bone. The air turned cold. Out of the shadows, two sentinels stepped forward. Alan and Lena ran. The sentinels did not chase. They just stood at the entrance of the memory cave and listened. As Alan and Lena escaped into the daylight, they looked back and saw something worse. A third figure had joined the sentinels, but this one was not stone. It was flesh. Back at their safe house, Lena ran tests on the symbols Alan wrote. She compared them to old cave markings, ancient ruins, and deep-sea carvings. Her screen filled with matches. "These symbols appear across every old human civilization," she said, "but they don't come from humans. They were taught to us." Alan blinked. "Taught by what?" Lena swallowed hard. "By whatever Cotter is." Alan stared at the paper in his hands. These words didn't just seal Cotter. They were given to us by it, as a way to escape. "Escape what?" Lena asked. Alan looked up, his eyes wide. "It's not just death, something worse." Night Alan heard someone calling his name. It wasn't Lena. It came from outside, soft, calm, familiar. He stepped out into the night. There, standing in the field, was a girl. She looked about 16. She had dark hair, pale skin, and no shoes. Her eyes glowed faintly. Alan walked closer. "Who are you?" The girl tilted her head. Then she spoke the ancient language fluently. "Zarithkor, Dumasaran, Katarivik." Alan stepped back. "How do you know that?" The girl smiled. "I always knew it. I didn't need to learn, I just had to remember." Alan brought her inside. Lena stared in shock. "But how? How can a child speak it?" Lena asked. Alan noticed something. The girl didn't react to sound. He clapped near her ear. "It's no response. She's deaf." He whispered she hears it in her mind. The girl looked at them both. My name is Mara, and the language isn't finished yet. Alan's throat went dry. You know the final words? Mara nodded. Yes. But if I say them, everything ends. Alan sat down, breathing hard. Then why are you here? He asked Mara. Looked at him and said quietly, because someone else already did. Alan froze. Who? Mara pointed at him. You. Alan couldn't move. The girl, Mara, had just pointed at him and said the words that shook his soul. You already spoke the final words. But how? He didn't remember. Mara sat calmly on the floor, tracing strange symbols into the dust with her finger. Lena whispered, if she's right. The sentence is complete. No, Alan said. I didn't finish it. I'd remember. Mara looked up. Not if the language doesn't want you to. Later, Lena showed them something new. She had decoded a pattern hidden in the symbols. Alan kept writing in his sleep. It's a rhythm, she said. It's the words. They follow musical timing. It's not just a sentence. It's a song. Alan blinked. A song? Yes, Lena nodded. Not one for humans to enjoy. It's a message. A code that speaks to machines, to gravity, even to time, Mara added quietly. It was the only way to bind Katter. In pieces, across space, across memory. Alan frowned. So this song, it's a kind of prison? Lena turned her screen to show an ancient diagram. No, she said. It's a key. Meanwhile, in deep space, the dead moon near Saturn began to shift. Under its surface, black pillars rose, humming with a low vibration. The stars near it flickered and died. Not exploded. Not burned out. They just stopped shining. Like a voice had told them to be silent forever. The song had started. Alan, Mara, and Lena flew to the Sahara Desert. There, hidden beneath the sand, was a vault Alan had dreamed of for weeks. They found it buried under a crashed satellite, a black pyramid with no doors. But as they stepped closer, the sand beneath them moved. The structure responded to Mara's voice. She sang just 3 words in the ancient tongue. The black surface split open with a deep chime. The desert air turned cold. Inside was a chamber made of stone and metal. Floating in the middle was a silver disc, spinning slowly. Symbols glowed around it, lighting up as Alan approached. He heard a soft melody. It was the same tune from his dreams, Mara said. This is one of the memory locks. One part of the song is stored here. Alan touched the disc. A shock ran through his body. His vision went black. Suddenly, he stood in the sky, high above a ruined earth. Below him, a great creature, black as night and taller than mountains, walked across the land. Its name burned in Alan's skull. Katter. But this time, Alan wasn't watching it. He was speaking to it. Thousands of years ago, his voice sang the ancient words, the full sentence, the full song. He was one of the original speakers, long before history began. They hadn't destroyed Katter. They had tricked it, trapped its mind in echoes and memory, locking it across time, using human voices as keys. The sentence wasn't a weapon, it was a promise. Adil Alan woke up on the floor of the vault. Lena helped him sit up. What did you see? She asked. I was there, he whispered. Thousands of years ago. I spoke the words. With others. We made a deal with Katter. Mara nodded. That's why the language knows you. You're one of the binders. Alan stood, as if I've already spoken the full sentence before. What's happening now? Lena answered slowly. You're speaking it again. But something's different this time, Mara added. This time the words aren't sealing it. They're calling it back. Back at their camp, Alan stared at the stars through a small telescope. One star blinked, then vanished. Just like the others, dead stars, he whispered. Lena joined him. They're not dying naturally. They're going dark in a pattern, following the song. Mara pointed to the sky. It's following the sentence, Lalan asked. Then what happens when the last star goes dark? Mara's voice turned quiet. Katter returns, fully awake. Suddenly, their radios turned on by themselves. A strange hum came through the speakers, part of the same melody from the vault. Then, a deep voice echoed through the static. One voice broke the sky. One voice must speak again. One voice must die.
Yeah.
The transmission ended. Alan stared at the radio. Lena whispered, "What does it mean?" Mara looked at Alan. "It means," she said, "someone must be silenced to stop the final line from being spoken." Alan looked up at the stars. He knew now the final word was close, and this time, speaking it might end more than just Earth. The stars were going dark, one by one, across the galaxy. Distant suns were falling silent, not destroyed, not dying, just turned off, like someone flipping a cosmic switch. Alan Reyes stood under the black desert sky, watching them vanish. Mara, the deaf girl who spoke the ancient language fluently, stood beside him. Her glowing eyes reflected fear. "It's almost time," she said. "The last part of the sentence is near." Alan nodded. His heart was heavy. He didn't remember speaking the final line, but the stars remembered, and they were reacting back. At the camp, Lena showed Alan a map made from star charts and ancient patterns. The dead stars formed a spiral, all pointing to one location, a black monolith orbiting. Jupiter, it had appeared just 2 days ago. No one had launched it. It was not from Earth. But somehow, it was waiting for him, Lena said. "It matches a shape I saw in the old vault carvings. It's the final memory gate," Mara added softly. "It's where the voice began, where it must end." A private ship took them into orbit. Earth space agencies were told it was a research flight. But only Alan and Lena, Mara knew the truth. They were flying to meet a sleeping god. As the ship approached Jupiter, the black monolith came into view. It wasn't just a structure, it was alive. Its surface pulsed with light, like a heartbeat. Strange symbols crawled across it like ants, and every time Alan looked at them, he felt them move inside his head. The ship docked. No one said a word. Inside the monolith, the air felt heavy. There were no lights, no controls, just a long, dark corridor. Filled with echoes, Alan heard his own voice whispering from all directions, lines he didn't remember saying. Each word bounced through the black walls like a memory refusing to die. "Zareth. Duma Shalanar," he whispered. "It's already speaking for me." They reached the center chamber, a wide, round room with a silver platform in the middle. On it stood a figure. Alan froze. It was himself, but older. His hair was gray. His face was marked with black veins. His eyes glowed faint red. The figure looked up. "I was waiting," it said. "I knew you'd come, because I already did." Lena gasped. "It's you from the future." The older Alan nodded.
Oh, that is from...
"A timeline where we finished the sentence." Alan stepped forward. "What happened?" The older Alan spoke calmly. Reality bent. Cotter awoke. Time shattered. Earth dissolved. "I survived because I became the final speaker." Alan's voice cracked. "Then help us stop it." The older Alan shook his head. "I can't. You're the one who still has a choice." Mara walked forward and stared at the older Alan. "You said the sentence ends with one voice," she said. "One death," he nodded. "Yes, the last word. It must be spoken with will. Someone must offer it freely, and once it's spoken, the sentence becomes real." "Forever," Lena whispered. "Then who has to say it?" The older Alan pointed to the center of the room where a symbol hovered in the air like a glowing flame. The final word, it floated, waiting. The older Alan looked at his younger self. "If you speak it, you complete the loop. Everything happens again." Alan stared at the word. "And if I don't, Cotter breaks free," the older version said.
What?
"And finishes it himself." The room trembled. Outside the monolith, something stirred in Jupiter's storms. A massive shape, coiled and dark. Rising beneath the clouds, the god of ashes was almost awake. Mara stepped forward. "I'll say it," she said. "End it with me." Alan grabbed her hand. "No." She looked into his eyes. "I don't belong here." I only exist because the sentence brought me. I'm an echo, Alan. You know it. Deep down, he had always known Mara was not a girl from Earth. She was a memory, given form, a voice created by the language itself, a helper, a warning, sacrifice. Alan turned to the older version of himself. Then what's the right choice? The older Alan smiled sadly. There isn't one. There's only the choice you can live with. Duh. The monolith began to glow. The final word pulsed between them. Alan stepped forward. His lips parted. The older version leaned in and whispered, "Just remember, some sentences were never meant to end." Alan Reyes stood at the edge of choice. The final word of the ancient sentence floated in the air, a glowing symbol that hummed with power. One word, one sound, could change everything. But he didn't say it, not yet. Beside him stood Mara, the girl who wasn't truly human, not truly alive. She was a voice made into form, a message, and across from him stood his older self, the Alan from a doomed timeline. 3 versions of one truth, 3 voices, about to decide the fate of. The world outside the black monolith, Jupiter boiled. Storms twisted into impossible shapes. Red lightning slashed the sky, and within those clouds, shape began to form. It was not a creature, it was not a god. It was the word itself, the original voice, the first idea, the living language, made of smoke, shadow, and stars. 2R. It had no face. It didn't need one, because it spoke directly into the minds of all things. And now it wanted its name back. Inside the monolith, the chamber shook. The glowing final word pulsed brighter. Symbols on the walls cracked. The air filled with whispers, some calling to Alan, some warning him to stop. He dropped to his knees. Visions flooded his mind. He saw ancient humans speaking the language together, forming a wall of sound against Qatar. A planet split in half when the sentence was spoken backward. A child born with the voice already inside her, Mara himself, in thousands of futures, speaking the word and breaking the sky. Mara stepped toward the glowing word. "I'll do it," she said softly. "I'll speak the end." But the older Alan shook his head. "If you do, you erase yourself. We're never supposed to exist. You're the side effect of a sentence spoken halfway." Mara smiled. "Was created just to say goodbye." Alan reached for her hand. "No," he said. "You've done enough." He stood, trembling. "I'll finish it." Lena's voice came through the communicator from the ship. "Alan, don't. There has to be another way." "There isn't," Alan replied. "But maybe there's a better reason to finish it." The older Alan raised an eyebrow. "And what reason is that?" Alan looked at Mara. "Hope," he said. "The language tried to trap a god, but maybe it also left behind something more, a way to change the end." Alan stepped into the center of the chamber. He reached for the word. The moment his fingers touched it, the monolith disappeared. He now stood inside the voice. Every part of the ancient language floated around him, not just words, but memories, feelings, lives. He saw people he never met, but somehow remembered. He saw himself, not as a man, but as a frequency, a unique sound, the language remembered and trusted. And he saw Cotter not as evil, but as a force. It had never wanted destruction. It had wanted to be heard. It was the first voice, the seed of thought. And long ago, humans feared it and locked it away. Alan now understood. The sentence wasn't a weapon. It was an apology. A way for humans to say, "We're not ready yet. But one day we will be." And now Alan had been chosen to speak, not to end the world, but to begin a new one. He turned to the final word, not the one the language expected, but the one he chose. He spoke it. Peace. The stars stopped blinking. Out. Jupiter's storms began to calm. And in the sky, Cotter slowly lowered its massive form. It did not roar. It did not attack. Instead, it listened to the new word Alan had added. The sentence had changed, and with it, so had the future. The monolith returned. Alan stood in the chamber. Again, his older self was gone. The glowing symbol had disappeared. Mara stood beside him, smiling, not flickering, not fading. She was real now. The language had accepted her, because Alan had rewritten the end. Lena's voice came through the comes again. What happened? Alan looked out at the stars, now shining again. We didn't silence the voice, he said. We answered it. The stars were no longer dying. The final word had been spoken, but not the one the ancient sentence expected. Alan Reyes had changed it. He didn't finish the sentence with destruction or control. He ended it with a new word, peace. Now, the universe held its breath. Back on Earth, strange signs stopped. The stone sentinels froze and crumbled to dust. The glowing symbols in deep sea. Ruins faded. In the forests and deserts where the ground had cracked open, the soil healed. Trees grew again. The voice, the old language, had accepted the new ending. It was no longer a prison, no longer a key. It had become a bridge, a connection between humans and something far older. Alan, Mara, and Lena returned from orbit. Black monolith around Jupiter was gone. It had vanished quietly, leaving no trace, not even a shadow. Alan didn't speak for days. He sat in silence, listening not to radios or computers, but to the world itself, because something had changed inside him. He could feel the voice now, not as a threat, but as a presence. A kind of understanding in every sound, every word around him. The language was not dead. It had just been waiting for someone to answer it with kindness. 1 week later, Lena gave a public report. She did not tell the full story, not about Cotter, or memory echoes, or cosmic prisons. She simply said, a rogue signal was neutralized. It came from deep space. No threat remains. Humanity is safe. But behind closed doors, the UN created a new file, codename, the Reyes Protocol. Inside it, single line. Some languages are not meant to be forgotten, only understood. Mara stayed with Alan. She still spoke the old language in her sleep. But now it sounded like music soft. It's peaceful. She helped Alan collect every ancient symbol and sound they could find, not to destroy them, but to preserve them. Together, they wrote a book. Its title was simple. They said the language was lost. Inside were no warnings. No threats, just quiet truths. Memories that no longer had to scream to be heard. Years passed, the stars stayed. Lit. But sometimes across the world, people reported dreams they didn't understand. Dreams of old cities, great stone halls. Symbols written in light. People began humming strange melodies in their sleep. Whispers, soft and ancient, returned. But now, they brought no fear, only wonder. In his final message, Alan wrote, "We were wrong to fear the voice. It was never the end. It was a beginning, one that waited thousands of years for someone to listen. And when it spoke again, it didn't bring war. It brought us a mirror, asked if we were ready to see ourselves." Somewhere deep in the galaxy, Cotter drifted. It was no longer asleep. It was no longer trapped, but it was at peace. It listened to the new sentence. Alan had spoken one that no longer ended with silence, but with choice and the universe. Wide and old and full of ancient fears, heard that new voice and remembered that even the smallest species, with the weakest voice, can rewrite the fate of stars.